हेलो बच्चों, आज हमने वो जो हमारी जो रेशियो एनालिसिस जो चल रहा है ना, अकाउंटिंग रेशियोस, आपका यो चैप्टर 5 क्लास 12 का एनसीईआरटी सीबीएसई, वो कंटिन्यू हमने कर रहा है अभी भी, बिकॉज दिस इज ए वेरी लेंथी चैप्टर। ये थोड़ा पार्ट बाय पार्ट हमने डिस्कस करा। दिस इज पार्ट 3। अनदर पार्ट 4 एंड पार्ट 4 भी कंटिन्यू होगी। सो आप कंटिन्यू इसको फॉलो करते रहें, सो दैट आपको जो कंटिन्यूअस जो ब्रॉड जो 4 हेड है, जैसे आप लिक्विडिटी रेशियो एंड योर सॉल्वेंसी रेशियो हमने ऑलमोस्ट डिस्कस कर दिया। आज जो रेशियो डिस्कस होगा एक्टिविटी रेशियो, देन उसके बाद प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी रेशियो, ये चारों ब्रॉड हेड डिस्कस होगी। सो आप जो देखोगे, मेरे जो लास्ट जो पार्ट 2 वीडियो में हमने डिस्कस किया था सॉल्वेंसी रेशियोस। सॉल्वेंसी रेशियो का अंदर में हमने 2 इंपॉर्टेंट रेशियो डिस्कस कर दिया, डेट इक्विटी रेशियो एंड डेट टू कैपिटल एम्प्लॉयड। सो आप देखोगे डेट मतलब है लॉन्ग टर्म डेट, यू अंडरस्टैंड दैट। इक्विटी मीन्स शेयर होल्डर्स फंड, नथिंग बट ये शेयर कैपिटल, रिजर्वेशन सरप्लस एंड other proprietor related to that funds. That is the things it will be coming. So once you understand that debt equity ratio and capital employed ratio, others जो 3 ratios है under solvency ratio easily आपको पता हो जाएगा। So another 3 ratios are your proprietary ratio. So proprietary ratio का जो फॉर्मूला है shareholders fund by capital employed। आप कैपिटल एम्प्लॉयड पहले रेशियो में आप जान गया क्या क्या कैपिटल एम्प्लॉयड है, ओन कैपिटल, लोन कैपिटल, इंटरनल कैपिटल। आप बैलेंस शीट का एसेट एवं लायबिलिटीज आप ठीक ढंग से आइडेंटिफाई कर लीजिए। जो लॉन्ग टर्म शेयर होल्डर्स फंड, दैट इज योर दिस थिंग्स, योर कैपिटल एम्प्लॉयड एंड योर दिस शेयर कैपिटल प्लस रिजर्वेशन सरप्लस plus your some other share warrant money received, all those things. So here also proprietary funds, shareholders funds means shareholders equity, you understand here earlier debt equity ratio, and capital employed also capital employed ratio, you can understand that. What is capital employed? Own capital, loan capital and internal capital, ये तीनों होगा, own होगी इसमें। So these are the your capital employed, shareholders fund by capital employed. Similarly, your total assets to debt ratio equal to total assets by long term debt. Balance sheet total assets by long term debt. Long term debt, you understand that what is your long term debt under your debt equity ratio. Similarly, your interest coverage ratio, net profit before interest and tax. Very carefully, before charging interest and tax, whatever net profit will come, that डिवाइडेड बाय योर इंटरेस्ट ऑन लॉन्ग टर्म डेट्स। सो लॉन्ग टर्म डेट्स जितनी है उसका इंटरेस्ट जितना है ये डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन आ जाएगा। सो योर मदर रेशियो इज योर डेट इक्विटी रेशियो एंड कैपिटल एम्प्लॉयड रेशियो। वंस यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस 2 रेशियो, these 3 ratios are new, nothing you have to calculate new, straight away you have to same line you have to calculate, only आपको याद रखना है ये फॉर्मूला देखो ऑलमोस्ट तो लिंक है सेंटेंस का साथ। टोटल एक्सेस टू डेट, इंटरेस्ट कवरेज रेशियो, डेफिनेटली इंटरेस्ट कवरेज प्रॉफिट का साथ रिलेशन है। प्रोप्राइटरी रेशियो इज प्रोप्राइटर्स फंड और शेयरहोल्डर्स फंड टू कैपिटल एम्प्लॉयड, प्रोप्राइटरी रेशियो। सो दीज आर द थिंग्स you understand. So now we will be going for another new ratio, that is activity ratio or turnover ratio, because this name itself is these things, this ratio is relates to turnover. So उसमें जो important ratio है, these are the ratios are there. Inventory turnover ratios, trade receivables to turnover, trade payables to turnover, investment net assets to turnover, फिक्स्ड एसेट्स टू टर्नओवर, वर्किंग कैपिटल टू टर्नओवर। अब जितने सारी आप देख रहे हैं जो एक्सेप्ट वन, ऑल प्लेसेस योर वन साइड इट विल बी योर टर्नओवर ओनली, अदर फिगर्स यू हैव टू आइडेंटिफाई। सो नाउ फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वी विल डिस्कस दैट थिंग, व्हाट इज योर दिस एक्टिविटी रेशियो मीन्स। एक्टिविटी रेशियो जैसे हमने फर्स्ट जो रेशियो जो पर्पस हमने डिस्कस कर रहा था, जे व्हाट इज योर दिस थिंग्स, लिक्विडिटी रेशियो, लिक्विड पोजीशंस आपको जानना पड़ेगा। And solvency ratio, how solvent you are, whether you will be able to repay your debt. Similarly, this activity ratio से आपको पता चलेगा how your business are being performed. That means speed, organizations जो profitability, how it is working well or not, that you will understand from here. So here जो पहले फर्स्ट जो रेशियो है इन्वेंट्री टर्नओवर रेशियो, कॉस्ट ऑफ रेवेन्यू फ्रॉम ऑपरेशंस divided by average inventory. Cost of revenue from operations, which are the things will come? Investment in the beginning, so opening stock investment, and net purchases plus your this thing investment नहीं है, inventory at the beginning, net purchases plus wages plus carriage inward less inventory at the end. ऑलमोस्ट आपको दिखाई जाएगा जो आप जो ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट का हिसाब ही ओनली दिस थिंग्स इट इज कमिंग. यू सी दैट कॉस्ट ऑफ रेवेन्यू फ्रॉम ऑपरेशंस, योर दिस थिंग्स inventories in the beginning, net purchases, wages plus carriage inward minus stock, that is your this thing cost of revenue from operations. इतना ही आपको आएगा. Then your average inventory is nothing but opening inventory plus closing inventory divided by 2. So once you calculate your cost of revenue from operations, average inventory is nothing but both opening stock of inventory and closing inventory. It is you have to take the average. This is your that inventory turnover ratio. Now we will be going slowly one by one other ratios also. What are those ratios? We can discuss this formula, all those things. So your activity ratios we have been discussing today. So first your that inventory turnover ratio we have discussed that side. So now we'll be discussing your that other ratios of your that activity turnover ratio, your trade receivable to turnover. So नंबर 2 जो है ट्रेड रिसीवेबल्स टू टर्नओवर रेशियो. So here formula will be there. Trade receivables, what are those trade receivables? Your net credit revenue from operations, average trade receivables. So where that average trade receivables are coming, trade receivables are your opening debtors, plus bills receivable plus closing debtors and bills receivable. By 2. So you see that when we are talking about average trade receivables means your opening debtors plus opening bill receivable plus closing debtors plus closing bill receivable divided by 2. So that means net credit revenue is your net credit revenue from operations divided by average taking this point. Your that number 3 your this is over trade payable to turnover ratio. So your turnover concept become the same receivable concept, only here you have to trade payable, average trade payable you have to calculate it. So here this formula is your here trade payable turnover ratio, you will be your these things, net credit purchase by average trade payable. See that your receivables concept may your revenue from operations. Once you are talking about your payable questions, definitely your net credit purchase. Net credit purchase you know. So average trade payable formula will be your opening creditors plus your opening bills payable plus closing creditors and bills payable divided by 2. So simple. This is the your receivable concept, this is the payable concept. This relates to purchase, this relates to sales or revenue from operations. This is the difference concept only. Otherwise it is the simple thing on that way. So your trade payable to turnover concept has come. Now your D, your investment net assets turnover ratio. So your investments or net assets means net assets turnover ratio. Net assets turnover ratio will be revenue from operations. Revenue from operations divided by capital employed. See, you understand that capital employed, what is the formula for that? Owned capital plus loan capital plus internal capital. That means other way around, proprietor's fund plus long-term debt. Right? That you have understood, no? Some other formula, your that solvency ratio part, you understand that? So here formula is that revenue from operations by capital employed. So capital employed formula is there. Three source of funding is there: owned capital, loan capital, internal capital. This is other way around, proprietor's fund plus a long-term credit. So this is the thing. Now your these things. Next formula is coming, fixed assets turnover ratio. These are all simple ratios are there. So fixed assets turnover ratio, net revenue from operations by your net fixed assets. Very simple. Net revenue from operation, net fixed assets. So fixed assets turnover ratio. Then next your working capital turnover ratio. Turnover ratio equal to your net revenue from operation by working capital. So net revenue operations, you know that thing. Working capital is your current assets minus current liabilities. So you know that which are those current assets? Your stock, your debtors, your short-term investment, plus your prepaid expenses, then advance tax paid, plus cash and cash equivalents. This is your current assets, and current liabilities your creditors plus bills payable plus any outstanding liability. So this you understand that current assets to current liabilities, that is first ratio, that thing that your liquidity ratio, the current ratio, same thing it is here. Your this thing working capital part is, it is coming. So today we have discussed all your ratios under your activity ratio. Their basic ratios are your inventory turnover ratio. Other ratios are related to trade receivable, related to your operations revenue. It is your payable account, that means purchase related. This investment means net assets. Fixed assets to turnover, turnover to common, net fixed assets, you have to take it working capital. So balance sheet item you have to understand properly, so that you could be easily known to you. So all अभी तक आज तक हमने जो up to part 3 we are completing these 3 ratios broadly. Your that thing liquidity ratio, then solvency ratio, then today we are doing the activity or turnover ratios. So once it will complete, I think one more day will be requiring. Please do follow continuously so that you will be understand. Part 4 we will be discussing your profitable ratios, and we will be summing up how all these ratio at a time one place you can recapitulate. Here basically you have to understand and recapitulate only, because all ratios calculations more or less common and interlinked are there. So today we will be concluding the video here. If you please do like to my shares and subscribe to this channel, so that I will be highly motivated to make more some videos, so that for your exam purposes you will be benefited. So we are concluding the video here. Have a good day.